As some 30 nations start crucial trade talks, rich and poor countries trade accusations of blocking a global trade deal. Just who is to blame, and can the Doha round be saved? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to this edition of Inside Story. I'm Hashim Al-Barra. Trade ministers and representatives from more than 30 countries are meeting in Geneva to attempt to conclude talks that began 7 years ago. The Doha round of talks, as they are known, are organized by the World Trade Organization. They're aimed at reducing trade barriers and aiding developing countries to promote free trade. It's hoped that developed nations, including those from the EU, the US and Japan, will bolster the economies of emerging markets such as India and China. Since negotiations began in 2001, the countries have met repeatedly but have been unable to find a compromise to their different demands. With so many countries in the debate, any concord will be no mean feat. The main sticking points surround the demand by developing nations for the richer ones to receive lower agricultural subsidies. They claim that the support given to already developed economies prices the poorer ones out of the market. On the other hand, industrialized nations are asking for countries with emerging markets to reduce import duties. They also want such countries to make themselves more open to imports from the more prosperous ones, a proposal the less developed nations are reluctant to accept. Well, as the Geneva talks kicked off, Pascal Lamy, the World Trade Organization chief, expressed a sense of urgency to conclude an agreement.
The time has come to move from discussions to negotiations. We've talked the talk. We now have to walk the walk to finish the round. We need positive results from this week's engagement, and all need to approach it with this clear objective in mind.
Joining us now are our guests in Geneva, David Hartridge. He's former Deputy Director of the World Trade Organization and currently Senior WTO Counselor at the White & Case law firm. In Paris, independent financial analyst Max Kaiser. Also in Geneva, Eileen Kwa, coordinator of the Trade for Development program at the South Center. That is an intergovernmental organization for developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And let me start by asking Mr. David Hartridge in Geneva. This is described by many as probably the last chance for the Doha round of talks. Are there any real chances for a breakthrough now in Geneva?
Yes, I think there are. It's obviously very difficult. Everybody knows that. But there is a chance. The issues are now very well defined and understood. It's come to the point of political decision, and that's why the ministers are here. There is no more technical uncertainty about what's required in agriculture and the industrial tariffs talks. Those are the two big issues for this week, and they are within the capacity of ministers to decide. The decisions are difficult, and everybody knows that.
Let me go now to Mr. Max Kaiser in Paris. Ms. Kaiser, now with the EU proposing to expand the subsidies cut by 60%, do you think this is going to be a genuine incentive for the poorer countries to make more compromises?
Well, according to the prediction market, hubdub.com, where insider information is legal, the chances of a deal are 25% or less, and I would be selling short that contract. I don't think there's going to be a deal. The developing countries have nothing to gain from this deal. In 2001, it was a completely different world. The U.S. economy was strong, the dollar was strong. Now the U.S. economy is crumbling, and the U.S. dollar is headed into the gutter. So the developing countries have nothing to gain from this deal. I don't see why they would even pursue it.
Eileen, there is a technical and a political aspect to this story, because in theory it seems very simple. The developing countries are asking for lower subsidies cuts in the industrialized countries, which are in return asking for more access to for their manufactured goods in the poor countries. Why is it difficult? Why has it been evasive for the last 7 years?
It's been evasive for 7 years because there are no real agricultural subsidy cuts that are being offered, either by the United States nor the European Union. These countries are basically shifting subsidies into what is called WTO legal boxes, and there are no real cuts in these subsidies. And we know that, for example, from the US Farm Bill, and there was a heated debate, but there was no appetite from the Congress to actually cut US farm subsidies.
Mr. David Hartridge, there's a real issue here, which is the EU, the Americans and the Japanese having said recently it's high time for India, China and Brazil to stop entrenching their positions in the name of poor or developing countries when they are global superhouses. Is there any room for compromise between the emerging countries and the industrialized ones?
Yes, I think there is room for compromise, and the parameters have been laid down in the modalities text which ministers are looking at this week. There is a possibility of a deal. I understand very well what's been said about the unreality of subsidies cuts. I would agree absolutely that it would be in the interest of all of the major industrialized countries to reduce their agricultural support, as it would be in the interest of developing countries and other agricultural exporters that they should do so. But it's also in the interest of countries like India, Brazil and China to reduce their own protection. We reduce protection for our own benefit, not for the benefit of trading partners.
But then,
So I think the parameters of the deal are there.
Mr. Max Kaiser in Paris, this is a real complex issue. In India, for example, the Indians are very well interested in getting access to the international market for their software experts. But on the other hand, they are concerned that opening up their agricultural market could be a severe blow to their agriculturists. Is there any way to juggle both the concerns and the hopes of the Indians?
India has access to Walmart and nuclear weapons. How many more farmers in India have to commit suicide before maybe the message gets through this is not a great deal for the Indians? On the terms of nuclear weapons, which India accepted completely outside of international standards, why not then let Iran develop their nuclear program? It's total double standards as applied by the developing countries. The developed countries, and the developing countries can see right through this. It's not in their interest to pursue this deal. They've got the money. China's got 1.7 trillion in US dollar reserves and other reserves. They've got the leverage. US has no leverage. These things, US dollars, these are weapons of mass financial destruction,
But
and they're
Mr.
destroying
Marx,
the American economy.
As you know, this is a matter of life and death for millions and millions of farmers. And let me go for this to Eileen Kwa. Eileen, if this deal goes ahead, aren't you concerned that this is going to be the end or the beginning of the end for the domestic produce in many, many countries?
Yes, I am. This plus other regional bilateral free trade agreements will be very, very difficult for small farmers in many, many developing countries. Already, as a result of the Uruguay round and the structural adjustment policies of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, we have seen the decimation of small farmers all over the world because governments in developing countries have been asked to lower their tariff levels, and this has led to importation, massive importation and subsidized imports from the United States and the European Union, for example, into many, many developing countries, for example, in Africa.
Mr. David Hartridge in Geneva, it has been said for the last 7 years that the problem with the Doha round of talks is the lack of flexibility and political will. Why is it political? Is it because of fear? This is an issue of strategic interest or just a matter of elections?
There is a question of political will, certainly, but I don't agree with Mr. Kaiser, who has been saying that there's nothing in this for developing countries and he can't understand why they're still trying. The fact is that's not what the developing countries themselves are saying. They're here in this building now, they are trying, as they have been for 7 years. They do see benefit in it. One of the things which has already been achieved is an agreement to abolish export subsidies, which was discussed just now and which certainly were a very important and damaging policy, damaging that is from the viewpoint of developing country farmers. The agreement to abolish them has already been made as part of this round. The reduction of other subsidies by the industrialized countries, other subsidies on agriculture, is a major objective. And unless there are serious disciplines on that, there isn't going to be an agreement. But India knows, and it will certainly try hard, as it has done, to protect the position of its own farmers. We all know that that's a major issue for India.
Right.
And they won't give it up.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, time for a short break. When we come back, what's the world going to gain if Doha trade talks succeed? Stay with us.